I am Joel McLeod, and welcome to the 905er. When I was growing up, the mall was the place to be. Despite my parents' misgivings, often in my teen years, I'd find myself meeting up with friends there to see a movie or to grab something to eat in the food court, especially at Christmas time to buy presents or get ideas for the people on my list. However, I'm sure if you're like me, that you've noticed those habits have changed. More and more, you're purchasing your items online. Browsing has turned to scrolling, and your reasons for spending a day at the mall are growing fewer and fewer. If we take that fact and multiply it by everyone who lives in the 905, then it shouldn't be surprising that so many malls are being put up for sale. This summer saw three major malls in the 905 being sold to real estate developers: Lime Ridge Mall in Hamilton, the Penn Center in St. Catharines, and Seaway Mall in Welland. All are being sold for hundreds of millions of dollars to developers, with plans to redesign these spots into mixed use sites, rental and condominium housing, along with commercial use site plans, are being put in front of municipalities to vote on. These malls were built to be a gathering place for all of us to spend our free time. We used to be able to eat, shop, and be entertained all in one day. These were integral to the way that we grew up in the 905. They mattered. So now that they are going away, what are they being replaced with? And how is that going to reshape the next generation of the 905? These are heady questions to ponder, which is why I invited Sean Marshall to talk with me today about them on today's episode. Sean Marshall is a Toronto based geographer and writer, focusing on public transportation, pedestrian safety, and local politics. He is a co founder of Walk Toronto, a grassroots advocacy organization for safer streets and a better public realm. Sean consults with local businesses, organizations, and government agencies to improve walking infrastructure and promote sustainable development. Sean has traveled across Canada by bus and train and has developed an interactive intercity transportation map for all of Canada, consulting with the federal government and transport advocacy organizations. His writings on urban issues and intercity transportation have appeared in The Guardian, Spacing, and TVO.org. He joins me today. Thank you very much, Sean Marshall, for coming on to talk about, I think, a topic that I've been looking to try and dive into for a while, but for some reason or another, just have not found the right opening. But as it turns out, this summer has kind of kicked the door open for me. So I'm very grateful to have you on here to talk about your expertise, and that is today's topic, which is the growing number of dead malls we're seeing across not the 905. So, Sean, thank you very much for taking the time to come on here.
Pleasure to be here.
You know what? Let's start from the basics. There are listeners who are probably saying dead malls. What are you talking about, Joel? There's I was at the mall the other day. I was walking through, and I had to pick up a thing or two from the mall. What are you talking about? Can you just enlighten our listeners in terms of what the terminology of what a dead mall means?
Sure. Dead malls is really an American phenomenon more than a Canadian phenomenon. Canada has a more conservative real estate market, for example. A lot of our shopping malls are owned by real estate investment trusts or pension funds. Oxford is owned by the Ontario Municipal Pension Plan. Cadillac Fairview is owned by the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, and they're conservative holdings, and they're really interested in making sure that their properties do well, and they're diverse into things like shopping malls, real estate investment, more and more office investment, all sorts of real estate. So they have very conservative portfolios, and for that reason, and also because we have more conservative banks and financial institutions in Canada, you never had quite the phenomenon of dead malls that you have in the States, where you have entire suburbs where there's this big empty gray land where a shopping mall is. There's a few of those in Canada, but it's not that many.
The
So, but we do have a few really good examples. A dead mall here in a Canadian context is really a place where, yeah, you can walk inside, but at least half the stores or a third of the stores are vacant. Many of the other stores are obviously there because the rents are cheap, that they're not name brand retailers that you think of anymore. And when you lost Zellers and Target, and then Sears Canada, and now Hudson's Bay, you lost those anchors that even a good mall, and I'm sure we'll get to talking about Lime Ridge, has just lost all its department store anchors. And
well,
Lime Ridge is going to have to rethink its
what,
position. And so
what
many other malls in Ontario are going to have to rethink their positions, but are
eh,
not dead as we may think of dead malls.
that's kind of what was the crux of starting this episode was earlier in the season, the you're right, Lime Ridge Mall in Hamilton had announced that it was being bought by an investment firm. And then there seemed to be a string of other announcements in the 905 kind of going down to QEW. The Penn Center in St. Catharines is another one that was bought up. And then recently down in Welland, Seaway Mall was bought up as well. And I just thought it was an interesting trend of the idea that these things were being bought up. And what I've always noticed was that malls seem to be losing more and more uh, big attraction stores is how I'm going to phrase it. Like the destination shops, like, oh, I need to go to, as you said, the Bay. That was kind of the anchor store of that was in there. I always have to go in the Bay. While I'm here, I'm going to go and check the more specialty store in the mall, or grab a bite to eat at a restaurant. And that doesn't seem to be happening more. And I'm just maybe from your perspective, why why buy a mall anymore these days? Is kind of my thoughts. Why would like, as you said, a real estate investment trust put that, like, we're talking millions, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars into buying this property? And I'm wondering, like, tell me the business sense of this.
What you're seeing with some of these malls is that the ownership has changed to from buy, hold, maintain. And Cadillac Berry is very much buy, hold, maintain. So their premier shopping malls are Eaton Center, for example, in downtown Toronto, or Fairview in North York, Sherway Gardens. These are good top tier malls. Oxford has Yorkdale and Square One, for example, in North York and Mississauga. So these are top tier malls that they will just invest the money in and keeping those mall tenants happy. When Cadillac Ferry sold Lime Ridge Mall to a real estate investment company, that tells me that Cadillac Ferry does not see Lime Ridge as a mall just to make decent income property
Mhm.
off of. It's going to have to change to something else because it doesn't have any more anchor stores. It has two gigantic empty spaces on both ends of the mall, and then this Tesla dealership in another former anchor space that who knows how long that will
Right,
keep going.
right.
So with Lime Ridge and with many of the other malls in 905, what you're going to see is mixed use, very residential heavy development. And I can speak very much to my hometown mall. I grew up in South Brampton, and that was Shoppers Road, Brampton. And RioCan purchased the mall in 2000. And RioCan is the largest, might be the largest real estate investment trust in Canada. It's gigantic. Its holdings are coast to coast, and what it is more of an activist developer. And they've built some really interesting projects. For example, the Well downtown Toronto, they're behind, they're co-developer of that property. And that's a beautiful property if you're had a chance to see it. The Shoppers Road Brampton, at first, RioCan spent some money fixing up the mall. It was built in 1970s, didn't get a renovation. They gave it a minor renovation, brought in new big box anchor stores such as Canadian Tire. When the Bay closed that store, they demolished it and built more big box space. So for a while, it was making enough money as a big box destination with internal stores. But as the mall kept declining, RioCan decided that they want something to build something new. And they have a really ambitious, really interesting mixed use redevelopment project because you have the LRT coming in from Mississauga and
Right.
that
Yep.
eventually goes to downtown Brampton. You have major Zoom transit bus routes that connect to Bramley Go and to downtown Brampton and to Square One, Sheridan College, and it's a major transit station area. So everything's in place to make that a high density mixed use that the whole mall will eventually get replaced. It'll be a very slow long-term process to do that because there's still tenants in there have leases, and you don't want to remove things like the grocery stores and the kinds of services that residents rely on. It's still a major commercial property, but
But
eventually that will be high-rise mix of condo and rental units
right.
that will provide at least some housing. With this, we have a housing crisis going on right now. And for a lot
The
of these, sorry.
I was just going to say looking at the plans
Mhm.
for the properties in question that we were talking about, Lime Ridge, Penn Center, and Seaway Mall. The plans that's being proposed by these new owners is exactly that. That kind of we're going to in some cases tear down portions of the existing mall with the intention of reconstructing mixed use condo and whatnot. And I'm not going to say it's a succeed or fail, but we're talking really kind of a restructuring of a lot of the 905 communities. Like if you think about these, when these malls were built, they were built kind of as a congregation point, right? Bus routes would go there. The idea was like, we're going to draw in the surrounding city and you're going to come here. And the idea is you're going to spend a day here shopping, eating, dining. You might see there was movie theaters there at one point. We still used to do that. And I'm wondering, like, what I guess I'm going to ask you to editorialize here. Like, what's your opinion on this? Like, are we losing something? Are we gaining something, or is this just like let's just wait and see how this unfolds?
Sure. I thing with the malls is that malls is that third place where teenagers hang out. That one of the teen movies in the 90s and 2000s,
Yeah,
Mean
yeah,
Girls or whatever. That that's never been the same. You don't have the movie theaters in there. If you go into some of these larger malls, there's no congregation space anymore, very limited seating. Eden Center downtown has almost no benches anymore, for example. They don't want people to hang out. They want people to come in, spend money, and go. A lot of these malls. You don't have a lot of the sit-down restaurants anymore that used to have. Yorkdale used to have Casey's, for example, where I lived near there for a few years, and it was a place to go, sit down, have a meal, have if you want to have a few drinks, you can have a few drinks, and just to hang out for 2 or 3 hours. That's gone especially as Yorkdale continues to upscale. So you really had a you have, you're losing a lot of the mid-range malls where you could spend a day. When I lived near Shoppers World, I'd hang out at Shoppers World, even if there's an arcade there. You don't have arcades in the malls anymore. There was a sit-down Pizza Hut I'd sometimes go to after day at high school. That's gone. I can't think of any sit-down restaurant at Shoppers World anymore.
mm-hmm.
So and a lot of those types of restaurants have moved to these parking lot pads outside the mall
Right,
itself,
right, right.
so they can have separate hours. They're not have to deal with security issues. The malls can lock their doors, and you don't have to worry about the restaurant patrons. And so you kind of already lost some of that. The malls themselves, there's I think it's a broader social issue where people are just spending more time at home, playing video games. Social media has changed a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
culture that we had, that malls were big in the culture. But if you look at some of these plans, and I'll talk to Shoppers Road, is that part of the Shoppers Road redevelopment is they're going to expand a small park, make that much nicer, a community center, daycare, elementary school, and a small branch library is supposed to be part of that plan. And that's what will be done by the city. because the city and RioCan have been working together on a master plan for that site. It's slowed down because of the real estate market has changed in recent years. Interest rates are up, condos are harder to sell. So you're going to see more rental as part of these properties. And RioCan's only now starting phase one of that project. And it's going to be a multi-year plan. So it's really an evolution. Malls were always there to make money. And in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, shopping mall was a great way to make money.
Hmm.
So right now, it's changing to a mixed use residential, and investors are switching to residential in especially in the rental sector. Is that you're having these big companies now who are interested again in building rental because some of the incentives are back,
Hmm.
and it's also in building residential, and also it's a good long-term investment. We can, I don't want to get too much into some of the issues of rent stabilization and rent control because those are gone for brand new buildings, so they are more attractive as an investment. But I don't want to go into where the government that's a separate issue altogether. But this is
Well,
where real estate investors can make money. And those malls, because they had transit, because they're at the corners of arterials to attract shoppers, are the ideal places for residential development. And they may not have neighbors right next door that are going to complain about high rises going up next to them. In fact, if you look at many of the malls in Ontario, they are, especially in the suburbs, they're surrounded by higher density uses because that was the plan. He built
right.
like a city center or town center around the mall, and he built the rental apartments or condo apartments in that area. Look at Promenade and Vaughan. Look at Bramley City Center. Square One's a beautiful example of this. So you don't have the NIMBY aspects. It makes it a lot easier to build. You have ready purpose land with all the utilities in place. And it's really a sustainable place to build these high-rise mixed-use developments. And then you
Well,
have the shoppers already in place who are living there who will still be able to frequent either the remains of the existing mall or the rebuilt mixed-use areas.
you had mentioned earlier the idea of the third place, and that's something that I kind of wanted to touch on. Is that these were I remember as a kid, uh, the going over and you'd spend it like the Saturday afternoon at the mall, just
Mhm.
wandering up and down and looking in the stores and whatnot. And that was kind of where we'd hang out. And the idea of the third place as just a place of like social gathering. Um, you mentioned this is a kind of a way to kind of redefine the third place, I guess, for the 21st century in our cities. And I'm wondering what would you if you were sitting on the board of RioCan, right? And they're like, well, how what do we do with this property? We just bought this couple $100 million valued property, and we want to turn into townhomes or condos or whatever have you. What would you want to see on the plan for that development in terms of turning into a really awesome third place that people in St. Catharines, Welland, Hamilton say, no, I'm going to spend my afternoon there.
You're going to have to invest in public spaces, and those are going to be either joint venture. They're going to either be privately owned public spaces or POPs. And you see
Mm-hmm.
some of this in urban development in Toronto and Hamilton, where it's a privately managed space that might be ringed with restaurants or patios, that sort of thing that want to be surrounded by other people, but then have a central feature to attract, draw people in, a fountain, a splash pad, a skating rink in the winter, that sort of thing. If you look at shops at Don Mills, at Lawrence and Don Mills in Toronto, that's a uh, private property developed by Calic Fairview, and it has a really nice central square in the middle. It's private, so that if you're causing problems, they can kick you out, and that's an issue with privately owned public space. But it does have things, features like a skating rink. It does have fountains, and it
Mm-hmm.
has restaurants along the side. That's become the new third place in a lot of these developments. Shoppers Row Brampton is different because it's going to have a lot of public space in conjunction with the city. If I was wanting to live in one of these places or was a neighbor to one of these areas, I would really want to push for a great public realm to encourage people to, because the public space, the third place is going to be public, um, less so private, especially with the change of in some of the land uses. And especially since these mixed use areas, if Penn Center, for example, they demolish the interior, it's going to be exterior. You want high quality exterior places to be that are going to be Four Seasons and that are going to um, attract retailers and restaurants, cafes, ice cream parlors, for example, stuff that
Hmm.
there'll be a natural synergy the between the retail that's surrounding this public space, that's going to attract residents and people from outside. I'll go to the art show that's going to be launched at that place, for example,
Right.
and then go and check out the cafe, pick up a coffee from the cafe, or go pick up a few groceries, for example. And if the transit's there, the transit's definitely there at Penn Center. The transit is definitely there at Lime Ridge. You're going to be able to track people that way. And I think the focus really needs to be on outdoor and civic public spaces, providing that third place rather than the interior mall.
Do our municipalities like Hamilton, St.
Mhm.
Catharines, Malone, and whatnot? Because I get the sense that this is the new trend. We're gonna see this isn't a blip or a drop in the water. This is gonna be like we're gonna start seeing all of our malls eventually take on some form of this. I'm wondering if our municipalities need to kind of step up and kind of use whatever power they have to really tell, like, because it's the development, right? They're going to have to, the developer has to submit the plan to the city saying we want to do
Mhm.
this. And I know everybody wants
Mhm.
housing, but we have to make sure that our cities are livable and enjoyable to live in. And
Mhm.
that's where I'm just thinking in my head, the next major property that I can see at some point in the future being done this to is Square One. Because that is, I know it's huge, and I know there are people probably like they're shaking their head as they're listening to me say this. They're from Mississauga, but I don't. The trend is coming, and it's just the fact that Square One is so huge, it can withstand the trend for a lot longer. But eventually, it will come that somebody's going to buy and say, "No, we're going to cut half of it in half and build up this nice community within the Mississauga City Center." And I'm just wondering, what does the Mississauga City Council have to do to make sure that okay, but this is still a public space for everyone to come and enjoy?
Mississauga State Center is a really fascinating example because a lot of the elements of those successful third places are already there. Because not
Mm-hmm.
only is Square One a major mall, it's also where the city of Mississauga decided to put its city center rather than one of the
Right, right, right.
historic communities of Port Credit or Cooksville or Streetsville. So it built a city hall there. It built has a really nice central library. They redid the plaza in front of City Hall to build this actually wonderful public space called Celebration Square, and
Mm-hmm.
that's right across the street from the mall. And I know I've seen plans of it where you're going to have a grid of streets. Most of the mall will be retained, at least in the medium term, because apart from the Hudson's Bay building, there's no empty space in that mall. It's a very popular mall. And when you have the light rail built and you have the loop that comes in and around Confederation Parkway, and you have so much residential development around it already, it will be easy for 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 Oxford, you operate that mall, is to move the parking into parking garages and then build on some of those parking lots and move the parking elsewhere. And hopefully maybe more people will come in by foot from the surrounding residential areas or by transit when the light rail gets when it opens up. So, and they're probably banking on it because building parking garages underground, especially, is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be
Mm-hmm.
tickled pink if everybody did not come in by car. because that'd be a lot less property for them to
Well,
maintain.
I would also argue if they went to the government, or sorry, the provincial government, and argued about making that a destination for Go bus transit, because I
Yeah.
know a lot of a big attraction for the Square One is also people out where I live, out near Hamilton, going into Square One because that one store has a thing that I need to buy or whatever.
Hmm.
So you get on the QW up the 403 to the 401, and you get off at Square One. But if you're just saying nope, I can get on my local Go bus transit, and it'd be a popular destination. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you can cut down on the number of cars that are coming in for the one-off purchase.
Yeah, and also diversifies the customer space, particularly students, because Square One, if you look at it, there's you got bus connections to McMaster,
Mm-hmm.
local connections to Sharon College Oakville and Sharon College Brampton, um, to the subway, to York University, all the way out to Durham College if you want to sit on a bus for 2 hours.
Right.
So it does have all those connections in place, and that's why Mississauga City Center, the Square One area has so much, even though a lot of potential you can already see as you walk around,
Mm-hmm.
especially west of the mall, you really see the potential for something bigger. And if you look to Metrotown in suburban Vancouver and Burnaby, that has a SkyTrain station, a big bus terminal. It has several malls, including Asian-themed Crystal Mall next to it, plus the gigantic Metrotown and Metropolis Mall, which is similar size to Square One. It's gigantic. And yet you have great public parks in the area. You have a grid street that's easy to walk. You have good parks, good civic spaces, movie theaters, lots of restaurants, and lots of street-facing retail as well. You have a little bit of that around Square One. So I think when I'm a municipality and I want to encourage good walking, is design a place where people are going to walk. Don't force them to go around longer than they have to, say between City Hall and the transit terminals, the GO Transit, Mississauga, and the LRT. Make sure that's a very easy walk. Is if you're going to be replacing parts of this mall, and I'm sure part of Square One will eventually come down, particularly around the Hudson's Bay store. But I think most of it will stay because there's very few vacancies in that mall, even now.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much a destination mall. And we're going to still have destination malls around that are not going to be fully redeveloped. Even Yorkdale is going to have new development, but it's all going to be in the parking lots. The mall will stay because those are your big destination malls, and that's what's going to happen. You're going to have a more of a where there's a hierarchy right now between neighborhood plazas where you have a grocery store and a few ancillary
Yeah, yeah.
services, and the big super regional destination malls. There's going to be very little in between anymore.
That on that note, because I think we're at the start of this trend of like the new kind
Mhm.
of urban design of what our cities at least in the 905 are going to look like.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's a fixed endpoint, but I think as we're seeing more and more retail uh, purchases going online, Amazon, Indigo. This is where people are going to buy those kind of one-off things. We don't spend the day going out shopping for towels and those kind of purchases. As we go, this isn't going away. It's going to become more embedded in our lives. So I'm just wondering, um, here in the 905, like a staple of suburbia are, as you said, those kind of big plaza centers, right? Where you have, your Home Depots, and there'd be like a Bad Boys or these other kind of big niche retail operations. How long do you think those have to last? Because I mean, if a mall is closing and they're being sold off to be repurposed into these kind of third place use, the urge is there for we need more housing. And I'm wondering, are these places kind of on a borrowed timeline that, they're kind of the next thing that's going to be looked at from a real estate developer saying, yeah, I could take that. We don't need that big, 1,000-foot square foot footprint. I can tear that down. That's like, 3 condo buildings right there.
Yeah, the power centers are a different beast altogether,
Okay.
but I can see a bit of that coming. If you look at Crossroads Plaza at Western Road and 401, that's the first one that's going to go. Because there's a brand new power center at Islington and 401. So Canadian Tire's already moved there. There's not much in there anymore except from a Loblaw superstore. Um, Best Buy's gone. Most of the places are gone. It's a really good LCBO there, but that's about it. So that is close to the 401. That's close to Weston and the GO station there. So that will be C redevelopment. Um, Along the Golden Mile in Scarborough because the LRT eventually they'll open. We don't know when, but eventually they'll open, and that's already designated for urban redevelopment. If you look at a big box store like a Home Depot or a Canadian Tire, those are really easy to assemble, disassemble. There's not a lot of capital wasted in demolishing those types of stores. So those in some places are good placeholders. Usually in an old industrial area like the Golden Mile, replace the old factories and warehouses with these new big box, and that kind of sets the stage for future development. If looking at a place like Meadowlands in Hamilton, for example, another big box center, that'll take more time because it's not as a great a location. It's surrounded by the 403 and the Link freeways there. And it's kind of more isolated. It's not easy to get to places like McMaster or even Mohawk College from there, where you do have a lot more transit links at places like for example, Lime Ridge.
Mhm, mhm.
Another one that I'd like to see upgraded and redeveloped a second time would be the old Center Mall property at Barton and Ottawa Streets,
Okay.
because that was Ontario's first major regional mall back there. It had the first full-size suburban Simpson Sears store, and then originally it was a racetrack, and then it got redeveloped as a big box complex. It's not great. They put a little food court in the middle, and that's, I guess, your third place. Uh, but again, that's probably going to see urban developments because it's in a great kind of gray field area. It's an area where you're not going to have a lot of community opposition to intensification, especially as a long-term phase project. But a lot of these big box centers, Heartland, for example, Mississauga, that's under flight path. That's a very industrial area. That's probably not going to change. So some will, and some will. Golden Mile, for example, is a perfect example of that. But those will last longer. Home Depot, it's a lot kind of harder to buy a lot of stuff from Home Depot online. Canadian
Mhm.
Tire still does very well despite online shopping. Walmart is another one that continues to do really well despite online shopping, and they're the biggest big box of all these days with the groceries and everything else going
That's
on.
isn't that kind of, but this is kind of getting a bit off topic, but that's kind of where we're going, is that these big, in terms like I'm looking at it like kind of our shopping habits,
Mhm.
is that there's one-off things like, oh, I need to buy like I said, towels, or I need to buy a book that I've been looking at. Okay, I'll go on Amazon or Indigo,
Mhm.
boom, purchase, and it's delivered tomorrow. But as you said, like the Home Depot, I know for myself, I'm going through a home renovation, so going to like the Ronas and the Home Depots, you're going there because like, no, I need to buy like this, like I can't have drywall ship 24-hour shipping. We don't do that. I go to Home Depot, like, no, I'm gonna buy this, this piece of drywall. I need however many, because for the project, or I need piping for
Yeah.
plumbing. That's not something that you just like, oh yeah, that's a prime click and collect, I'm going to get that drop ship by the end of the day. These things are planned, and they're budgeted. It's
Mhm.
not a spur of the moment thing. So you're right, I can always see that, but I'm just, where those were always an anchor retail space, right? Like like I'm thinking of the power centers, I want a Home Depot in there because I'm going to get like the Montana restaurants and the whatnot, all filling up the periphery stores.
Well,
It's not going
periphery
to go
store.
away because
Perf- Sorry.
I was just thinking, like, that's going to change. We're always going to have a Home Depot and a Walmart because people are still going to buy stuff online from Walmart, but then drive in is like, I need to return this. It didn't fit. So though you're right, I can't see those disappearing, but could we just say, like, look at a day when those become more centralized in terms of, like, why not give like a power center, and that's all it is: the Walmart, the Home Depot, and a third, like a Best Buy or something in there for the electronics. I'm just spitballing here. But is that, could we foresee that someday in the future? Is that's where I go for my exchanges and my returns, or my one-off big purchase pickups?
Well, definitely. If you look at Walmart, one of the big things they have now is pick up, click and collect.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yep.
drive up to it, and they put in my car. I know my brother really likes that. He lives up in Sudbury, and he's big on that because they have a young kid and they don't want to go into the store.
It is
But they
convenient.
also it's convenient, and you also don't you can pick it the same day. You don't have to worry about Amazon and Porch Pirates, and
Yep. 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 Yep.
so that's very convenient, and that's why uh, Home Depot, that's why Walmart will continue to do well. Their locations generally aren't set up as well for redevelop the same way that shopping malls are because they don't have the transit for the most part. A lot of transit agencies will go all their way to make a stop with a shelter in the middle of the parking lot for Home Depot, Cane Tire, Walmart, because that's where a lot of their transit riders go. That's something you actually do better here than the United States, where there's long walks across intersections and that to get to them. But no, given the fact that they're further out, and generally less in more industrial areas and less desirable areas to redevelop. And there's such going to be such a backlog with those prime properties as
Mm-hmm.
well. I don't see a lot of them transforming anytime soon because they're also newer. The shopping malls were really 1960s and 1990s
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon, and then it just stopped being built except for Vaughan Mills. That's the only one that's really built since. So they're not in the same league. They're very much more car centric than the shopping malls of old were. Because once you park your car, you go inside and you're there. Where power centers are, you drive your car to one retailer. If you want to go to the second one, you get in your car and drive across the parking lot to the second one. And there's a lot less cross shopping opportunities because you say go Home Depot, I'm just going to Home Depot. Maybe I'll stop at the McDonald's or Tim Hortons that's in that plaza, but I'm not going to go and visit the other stores there. It's very much one stop. It's they're one stops only, where
Right.
malls are. Yeah, I'm going to browse for a couple of hours. Look at if I'm looking for clothes, let's see what they have in some of the stores I like, see what fits, see what styles I like. And again, there's always going to be some of that experiential shopping, especially for things like clothes purchase. It's not going to be entirely online. Um, Especially if you want to look at what's new. H&M, for example, the fast fashion, they rely on the stores, getting people in there and having a look. Winners, for example, is the big box retailer that thrives entirely on the hunt of the thrill, supposedly, where you go in, the inventory changes every week. You can't go really do that online. There's always
Right.
going to be a demand for some of this retail, and there's always going to be demand for some experiential and destination shopping malls. So people can go and see what the new thing is, be seen, see and be seen, for example, and then make a day of it. There's still going to be demand for that. It's just you're going to have those secondary malls like your Shoppers World, maybe your Bramley Sea Centers. Those types of malls are going to have to
Mm-hmm.
reimagine themselves. Where even at Yorkdale will still be Yorkdale, even though there might be some condo towers surrounding it. It's still going to be Yorkdale. Square One still going to be Square One. Lime Ridge is not quite in that same league, so it's going to have to rethink what they do with a lot of that property.
You know what? I think we'll have to leave it at that. I think we're at the cusp of major changes to the 9 to 5, the places that we live. I think it's exciting right now, because we can imagine, the sky's the limit in terms of imagining how this is going to work and what it could do to help, this new, I think the new era of commerce that we're entering into with the digital age, as well as the need for us to find places that we all can get together and socialize and see each other again. And so, Sean, thank you very much for coming on and having this chat with me. It's I figured this is just the start of one of many as we see how this unfolds over the coming years, what we're going to see. So thank you very much, Sean Marshall, for taking the time to come on.
All right, thank you.